Hi, I'm Dea Early. I'm a professional ceramic artist from Big Bear, California. I have been teaching for over 28 years. I've taught ages from 4 all the way up to 80 years of age and all grade levels in between. I'm hopefully going to be showing you some really fun tricks to make it easy. There's going to be some challenges you're going to get to overcome, but it should be a lot of fun. Are you ready? Let's get down, let's get dirty. Okay, first thing we need to do to get the clay ready to go on the wheel is to prepare it. When you first take it out of the bag, it might not be even consistency and moisture. It may have some air bubbles in it. So what we're going to do is we're going to wedge the clay, and that will produce an even consistency. We're going to use a plaster bat right here. It's just basically like a plaster of Paris poured into a cardboard box and let it harden. And this is what we use, and it kind of helps remove the moisture out of the clay. What we're going to do to wedge is we're going to take and just place the base of our hands right here and press down like that, and it makes just kind of like a couple of little indentations. And we're going to pull it forward and just lightly roll it. You don't want to roll it too far over the top of each other because you don't want to form air bubbles. We'll just do that several times. And this is called a ram's head wedge. You can see how it starts to form kind of like a little ram's head here with the horns. And this is starting to get nice, even consistency. You do this way a couple of times, and then you turn it to the side, and you do it again. Okay, there's another type of wedging technique that is called a shell technique, and this is where I'm only going to push with one hand. The other hand's going to be just kind of to stabilize. And this forms a shell looking design. You can kind of see it right there. This performs a top and a bottom, so when you paddle it, you kind of want to remember that this is going to be the bottom. But you get in here and you paddle and pat until it gets to be a nice round ball. This feels really good if you've had a bad day, because you can really get in there and beat on it. Get nice and round. A lot of times students will ask me how big to start with on a piece of clay, and I said just get something that your hands will fit kind of neatly around. Like the base of the hands right here touch, and the fingertips touch. And if you start with one about that size, it's real easy to handle while you're learning. When you feel more comfortable, you can go bigger. Now we've got it all ready to go onto the wheel, so we're going to remove the plaster bat, set it off here to the side. And you can go ahead and put like maybe a towel. Sometimes people put it across both sides, but I find if I put one on one side and one on the other side, they don't want to fall down between your legs, because you don't want to be able to, you don't want to touch them after you get started, because they get real messy. All right, now you can see that the wheel has circles on it, concentric circles, and what we want to do is we want to get this ball of clay as close to the center as we can. So I kind of lean over and look straight down. Okay, once I feel like it's really close, I just go ahead and give it a good smack. Okay, and that kind of holds it there. All right, now I like to wet my hands, but not the clay. I feel like if you spread it all over, it kind of tends to want to fly. So I just wet my hands. Now we're going to turn this on. And I want to show you that it's very, you can do very gradual. Just turn slow and you go real slow. That's about half speed. You can start to hear it. You'll learn with this one's kind of by experiment. This is all the way up to full speed right there. What I want is about 3/4 speed. So somewhere between half and full to center, because that's the first thing we have to do is get this so that it's not going to wobble around. If you see my fingers, you see how they're kind of bumping and all over the place like that, that means the clay's not centered. Probably the hardest thing you're going to have to learn is to center that clay, but I'm going to show you some tricks that should make it easier for you. So I'm going to wet my hands. Now, the first thing I'm going to do, this is my powerhouse. This is on my left hand, kind of right where this bone comes out right here. And I'm going to place this at 7 o'clock on the wheel. We talk about this is 12 at the top, 6 at the bottom, 3 o'clock, and 9 o'clock. And I'm going to place this right here at 7. Now, it would make sense to push towards the middle, but I'm not going to. I'm going to actually push to 11 o'clock, 7 to 11, straight across. And that's the trick that makes it easy. Okay, so if you can just kind of keep saying 7-11, 7-11, 7-11, you're going to get there, okay? This elbow is going to go right here into my hip, like that, okay? This hand is like a karate chop, right there. This part hits this little edge of the wheel, right, or of the clay right there. The fingers are pointed slightly upward, just slightly, not down, not way up, just slightly, okay. I'm going to press my hip forward and press my karate chop down. And a real gentle release. If it starts to drag on your hand, you want to just take and re-wet your hands. I'm going to turn this up just a little bit faster. I'm going to do that one more time. And a real gentle release. Okay, that's the first step of centering. Now we're going to take it up into a cone. This is going to get it centered even on the inside. The way I'm going to do that is that this is going to still be at 7 o'clock. This part right here is going to be at 2 o'clock. And I'm going to squeeze, press it. Now notice how I get kind of like a little pocket or a reservoir in there? We don't want that. What's happening is because my hands are going straight up and down. They're held like this, and that causes that pocket. So what we want to do is we want to take and turn our hands in slightly. So you have kind of a pyramid type shape right there. Okay, so these are just in, just a little bit. I'm going to flatten this down. I'll show you how it makes a difference. Okay, keep the hands shiny. All right, I'm going to take and turn those in just a little bit. See how that's hitting right there on that ridge. Okay, press in, and see how that forms that point. That's the cone part. Now we can go ahead, just a little bit more of a point, and then I can squeeze that up into a cone. Okay, now it's real important to keep those elbows up here into your hips or on your knees, because you really want to make sure it's stable. You don't want the clay bouncing and bumping you around. The hands. Okay, so we've got it into a cone. Now I'm going to take and flatten it down. I'm going to do this by pressing the left hand on top, the right hand just kind of gently around, press down. Elbows are down on the knees. Hold real steady as you're pressing down. Okay, once I get it kind of flat, see how the hand gets dry, so you just want to wet it. But by wetting your hands, you don't have clay and water flying all over the place. So I'm going to press, and I'm going to do this 7 to 11, karate chop down. Hold very steady. Press with your hip bone right here. I'm leaning in with the whole body. A very gentle release. Okay? We're going to do that a minimum of 3 times. That was once. Tip the hands in. Press your point up. Get that cone shape. Now, if the clay stops spinning, you start to squeeze almost too tight, you'll actually break the whole clay off. And if that happens, it's okay. Just wedge it and start over again. You're going to have some things like that. Occasionally, sometimes, the wheel, or the clay will actually fly off the wheel. It gets pretty crazy there for a few minutes. Don't worry about it. Pick it up, re-wedge it, start again. It doesn't take long. All right, take it down. We'll take the left hand, press it on top. Right hand around the edge. Elbows are on your knees. Hold steady and press down. Okay, go back to finishing this. 7 to 11, it's a pressing straight across. Karate chop, press down. 7 to 11, press down. 7 to 11, press down. And a very gentle release. Now you're going to hear me talk about gentle release or easy on, easy off. I'm going to use this bucket for just a second to demonstrate this. I'm going to set this back up here. You're getting all ready and you're kind of excited and you're getting kind of tense about this. So you're getting ready to grab this wheel piece, and what happens is you grab a hold like this. Do you see how the water is moving back and forth in there? Okay, that would knock your clay off center. So when we talk about an easy on, we gently lay our hands on the clay and then we start to squeeze, and you see how the water doesn't move. When we release our hands, if we just jump off, you see how the water starts moving back and forth? That'll knock your clay off center. So what you do is you've got a nice tight squeeze going on there, and as you release your pressure, and then move your hands off. You notice the water stays still. All right, take that down, out of the way. All right, we're gonna take it up one more time. That's gonna be our third time. Start getting your little point there. Keep the hands nice and shiny. Bring it up into a cone. Left hand on top, right hand around the edge. Press down, elbows on the knees. Don't put those elbows up. Keep them down. Okay, this is going to go 7 to 11. Karate chop down. And a very gentle release. That's called centering the clay. Now when you first start, you may have to do this 20 times until it's centered. A lot of times I'll have students ask, how do you know it's centered? How do you know it's centered? If one of the kind of answers I'll give them is, if you have to ask, it's not centered. I mean, you know it, it feels like it. If you gently put your fingertips on here, they don't wobble or bump around, they just kind of hold real steady, and you know that your piece is centered, okay? So practice centering, do it lots, and you'll be successful. It takes a little while. It's kind of like, you remember the first day you rode a bicycle, it felt funny, like you're gonna fall over and skin your knee? It kind of feels awkward like that. But once you get it and you start to get the feel, just like riding a bicycle, it starts to feel very easy and it's fun. So just be patient with yourself and give yourself some time. Okay, we're ready to start throwing a pot. What we're gonna do is we're gonna find the center of this clay, and the way to do this is by taking your right hand and 2 fingers, elbows down on your knees, and resting your hands there in the center. And if you can gently rest them without letting them move, you know you've got the center. If they're going around and wobbling around like this and stuff, you're not there. So just gently rest them, and when they can just sit there and let it spin, you know you're in the middle. Take the other 2, press down, and talk to yourself. Say, don't wobble, don't wobble, don't wobble, don't wobble, don't wobble. Hold real steady, elbows are on the knees. If it gets a little dry, put a drop of water in there. Real steady, and real steady, and a gentle release. Okay, now you notice I've not shut off the wheel yet. This is going to be the first time I shut the wheel off. Don't touch your clay because you'll knock it off the center. Okay, so just leave it alone right there. I'm going to take what's called a needle tool. You can use a toothpick or a shish kebab skewer or whatever. But what you want to do is you want to go straight down inside and put a hole in the bottom. What you're going to do is you're going to check the depth of the clay. Without touching the clay, I'm going to stick my finger down there. Pull it up, and I want the bottom of my piece to be about 1/2 inch. Okay, that way it gives me room to tool the bottom of the piece later if I want to put a foot on it. So I want to just measure that. Now, if it's like that deep, I have to turn the wheel on and I'll push further. If you go too small, it's okay. You just probably wouldn't want to put a foot on the bottom. You go too thin and it's going to crack or break on the bottom. You probably need to start over. All right, now we're going to turn this back on. I do not touch this piece while it's off. Now we were about 3/4 speed when we were centering the piece. I want to go about 1/2 speed to pull it open. As we get taller, we'll keep turning it down to being slower and slower. Okay, I'm going to wet my hands. Now, the next part that I'm going to do is what we call opening the floor of the pot. That's where we're going to make the bottom wider. And I'm going to go back to the same position that I was in, right here, hold very steady. And this time I'm going to pull towards my belly button or towards 6 o'clock. Very gently and slow. Pull straight across. Pull towards 6 o'clock gently. If my fingers get dry, add just a little drop of water. You always want to open the floor of the pot just a little bit bigger than you want it. That's still pretty small, so we're going to open it some more. If your fingers start to drag, open it just a little bit wider. Now one of the keys is you want to open it wider than you want your finished piece. So, because it starts to get smaller, so I want to have that a little bit wider. Okay. Now, I'm going to shut this off just to show you what's happening here. Do you see how it's starting to crack just a little bit? That's because the clay is just a little bit dry. But I'm going to see if I can't fix that. If not, we'll have to do another one here. Turn that back on, put a little water on my fingers. And I call this kind of a bridging technique. I'm going to make a C right here with my left hand and put it here at 6 o'clock. I'm going to take my first finger on my right hand and lay it across. See how that makes a little bridge? Okay. I'm going to just gently press down and in. Let me show you what that did. See how that fixed that? Okay? Alright. Now that we have the bottom of the floor open, one of the things that happens a lot of times is people, when it dries or they put it into the kiln, they get these little S cracks at the bottom. And there's a trick that can help prevent that. What we're going to do is we're going to start here with the 2 fingers at 3 o'clock. There's 3 o'clock on the wheel, so we'll start right there. And with just a light pressure, we're going to bring our fingers slowly in. We're not really making it thinner down there. We're just giving it a light pressure and bring it out to 3 o'clock and back into the center. Back out to 3 o'clock and back in the center. Do that 3 or 4 times. By doing that, that realigns the platelets of the clay. That's the molecular structure of the clay and makes a tighter bond so it's less likely to crack. Back and forth there. Just get it nice and smooth. And that'll finish off the inside of the pot. Okay, now that we have the floor open, we're ready to start pulling the walls up. And a lot of my students say, well, that's a pretty little pot. But when you get used to throwing, you're going to realize that that wall is way too thick. And sometimes if they're thick, they'll crack or break in the kiln. And it's not very comfortable if you're wanting to use it to lift and maybe make a mug out of or a bowl, because they're too heavy, they're too clumsy. So we want to thin these walls out. The way I'm going to do that is I'm going to work here at 4 o'clock on the wheel, right in here. Left hand inside, right hand outside. And I use my fingertips, or I'll use this side of the knuckle right out here. And it's a light pressure. Elbows are on the knees, and I bring the side up. And then I'm going to bridge to even that top out. Sometimes I'll use the sponge here instead of this. I'll come in here. You can also use a chamois, a little piece of sheepskin. So pushing a little harder on my outside hand than my inside hand. I'll just lift. You see how it's starting to thin that wall out? Okay. Still working here at 4 o'clock. Press and gently bring it up. You notice my elbows are on my knees. Because if I let my hands bump around, I can knock it off center and it's going to fall. Go. Okay. I'm going to press. This is kind of called our support wall or our stem wall down here. I'm going to push a little bit harder here, and that's going to really raise the pot up taller. And I can start to bring the clay up the side. Now you notice how the inside of the pot is getting smaller at the bottom. That's why we start with it larger. Make sure my hands are wet. Okay. Now, on a small pot, it's a good idea to practice with a rib, but where a rib is real important. This is called a wooden rib, and they come in different shapes and sizes. Some have a point, some are rounded on both ends. And you'll find different ones you like for different reasons. But the rib, what it does, especially when you get into your larger pieces, by using this along the side like this when you pull up, or you can use this one here at 4 o'clock, it's by taking this and pressing just like you would with your fingers and bringing this up. It starts to realign the platelets of the clay. It's kind of a chemistry term there. But it makes the clay molecules stronger the way they bond together, and so you can get a taller piece. I take an usually bridge about every time at the top. Now, we basically have our cylinder. It's about 1/4 of an inch here at the top, and it's about 1/4 of an inch here at this bottom edge, and then it kind of has a flare out. That's still called our support wall. At this point, we can take that cylinder and just leave it and be happy with it. We can put a handle on it, or we can take and do some other things with it. We can take, and this is called choking or collaring. My hands are wet, and I take just gently press it out of shape, but I can start to shape that just a little bit to get it taller. Gets a little more height. Now this is the first time you're going to see me take my elbow off my knee. So I can get straight up and down inside. Now watch me squeeze my hand down in there. Open that piece. And I get just a little bit taller there. Okay. Now that's your basic cylinder. We can start making this into lots. We can make it into a bowl. We can make it into a vase, a bottle. And basically the way we start to shape it is just like driving a car. You got your hands on the steering wheel and you want to turn the car this direction. So you turn the steering wheel. This hand's on top, this hand's on the bottom. Now watch what happens when I do the same thing. I always work here at 4 o'clock. This hand's on top, this one's on the bottom, and watch the way the clay steers in the direction that you hold your fingers. Okay? It's the same thing if we want the car to go this way. This hand's on top, this one's on the bottom. So we have this one on top, this one on the bottom. And you see how it starts to turn the clay inward. So by just, it's very simple. It becomes very natural to be able to do this. Okay, so let's go down and we'll do a little bit lower. I'm going to have the inside hand up high, right there. It's just a little bit here, excuse me. Okay, this one's up high, this one's down low, and watch what happens. See how that starts to turn that clay out that direction. Now the inside hand is going to be higher. And you can see how that starts to form a base. This clay's getting a little dry, so I'm just going to take and smooth a little bit of water on there. Okay, another shaping that you can do, let's say, see it's got just a little bit, I knocked it just a little bit off center. You can wet your hands, and this is kind of called collaring or choking. Just put your hands around, hold real steady. And do a real gentle release. And that starts to put that back on center again. Okay, just pull that out just a little bit more down there at the bottom. I always tell my students that the first pot that you throw, kind of let it decide what shape you want it to be. After you've done about 10 or 20, then you can decide. Okay, now this edge is just a little bit off, so I'm going to just take my needle tool right here from 6 o'clock, right out my belly button, and just going real slow. And when I get all the way through, lift it off. Just take a bridge, and that cleans up your edge. There we go. Okay. Now once you have this shaped, just shut this off just a second so you can see. There's a support wall down here, and we need to trim this off, but that was there to kind of help hold the pot up. So we're going to we can either use the wooden rib, Or we can take and use, this is called a wooden modeling tool. And we can kind of trim up this bottom area here. You can use the rounded side for different shapes. Just a tiny bit faster there. There we go. I'm going to take the sponge, a little bit of water, and just kind of soften and clean that up. All right. Now, the wooden rib, or anything, you can use your fingernail, or you can use any type of tool, any kind of even kitchen utensils sometimes. I'm going to take the point of this wooden tool and I can start doing some banding designs. Take the sponge and clean off any of the little kind of crumblies that are there. You can also use your needle tool. And don't go very deep or you cut a hole in it. Okay, we'll shut that off and take a look. Okay, when we put the sponge on it, it kind of takes a little bit of the detail, so I just wanted to see where I was. Come back in here. And there we go. Okay, so that gives you a little extra. Now the other thing that you want to do is you want to take your sponge and clean off any of the slurry. That's basically the clay and water that's formed on your hands. You want to kind of take off that layer that's there. Just kind of clean up the pot very carefully. Take and clean up the inside. Sometimes you have a little extra water down in there. Try not to have a whole lake down at the bottom, but if you have a little bit, you can sponge that out. Okay, let's take a look at that. There we go. Now, from there, you can take, and this could be just a nice little vase. You know, you could put a couple handles on it. You can also take and make a pitcher. And that, you can just take your fingers, they're wet, lay it right there on the side, take a wet finger here, and just pull a pitcher lip. And then you add a handle, and you've got a little creamer. All right, now we're about ready to take this off, so we're going to take and remove the splash guard. I'll set that aside. And we want to get a wire tool. And I like to add just a little bit of water around here at the base so it has something to slide on. I'll take a little water on that so it's area to slide. Okay, when you take and cut it off with a wire tool, they have these little handles, but I like to kind of wrap it around a couple times and put my thumbs down. I'll push straight down. If you use the handles and pull straight across, you'll cut a lot of the bottom off your foot, off the bottom of the pot. So I press both thumbs straight down to the wheel, keep it forced down to the wheel, and pull towards you. You start to see it move just a little bit. I'll come over here and do it again, and you'll see it move quite a bit. Okay, so then I take the bat, and I get my hands supported underneath there really well. And I just lightly slide that right onto the bat like that. Okay, now what I'll do with this is I'll let it sit probably until like tomorrow. In some temperatures or climates you can do that. Sometimes you can only let it sit out for maybe 2 or 3 hours. It kind of depends. But you want to get it to the leather hard stage, and then I'll show you how to tool or clean and trim the bottom of the pot. Okay. We just finished throwing our first pot, and now I want to show you how to tool the bottom or trim the bottom. This is a pot that was thrown yesterday, and it's now what we call leather hard. It's still wet, but when you touch it, it doesn't leave fingerprints. So this is a perfect time to be able to trim the bottom. But you see how it's kind of damaged a little bit, and it's not real pretty. So what we'll do is we'll flip this upside down and set it on the wheel. And you want to look straight down, and these circles again help you where you can kind of visually center it. Okay. Then we'll take a needle tool and we'll slowly turn the wheel on. I kind of hold my hand right here, and that's the absolute beautiful part about this Artista wheel is it's a real nice gradual start. It's a wonderful feature to this wheel. So I can just turn on very slightly, turn on too fast and it flies off. Faster there. Okay, take the needle tool, take it straight out from your belly button or 6 o'clock. Get your elbows on your knees here, so that on your legs, so they're braced. And I'm going to go ever so slightly. And I don't want to test up here where it's irregular. I want to come down here where it's kind of perfectly round. Go in slowly. When it starts to touch is when you stop. Let's get that back there again. Let's try this again. It's good things like that happen, so you can see that it's going to happen to you. Go in ever so slowly. When it starts to touch, I stop going in. Okay, I'll show you what's happening here. All right, there's where it's starting to touch, and that's where it stops. So we know that it's just a little bit further this way on the center of the wheel. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my finger right here where it starts, and right here it stops. And if I might put my thumbs down, they go right dead center in the middle. Okay? Get rid of that so you can see. In fact, it feels awkward if you put it off to the side, so you know you're right dead center, and just slightly push it towards the middle. Just a little bit. Turn it on, and let's check it again. Now it's touching all the way around. Oh, and see, it grabbed. That's going to happen to you guys. Now it's going all the way around. Shut that off. Take 4 balls of clay. They don't have to be perfect. Lay them at 3 o'clock and 9 o'clock. Around here. And lay that. So we've got just it. Now, if you push one side down and not the other, it's going to move the pot. So you want to push them both straight down to the wheel at the same time. Not into the pot, because you want to damage straight down. If you have a friend that can hold their hand right there, that kind of helps stabilize it. If you're real careful and go straight down, you shouldn't move that pot. Okay, and then do the same thing here. Push straight down at the same time on both of them. Okay, and then just make sure that sticks to the wheel nice, because we don't want those flying off. Okay, turn it back on and check to make sure that we haven't moved it off center. And it goes all the way around. Okay, now there's a couple different types of tools. These are called loop tools, and different shapes, you know, give you different patterns and stuff, and you kind of find the tools that you like to use, and you experiment with them both. I'm going to go ahead and turn this on. The first thing I'm going to do is make sure that the bottom is flat. So I'm going to put my hand here to keep it from flying off. I'll start here in the center. You notice my elbows are on my knees. Just make sure that there's nothing there that's going to catch. And you can see this bottom is very, very off center, and so I'm going to show you how I'm going to clean that all up. And now I've got that bottom nice and flat. If I would take this tool and start tooling this off, it's so far out of round, they'd probably grab it and just toss it off the wheel. And that wouldn't be a lot of fun after you've worked so hard to get such a nice piece. So with this one, I'm going to take the needle tool come in here and get that marked. And I'm going to start from the top and tool down. The needle tool go just a little bit further. That's why we centered it down here, because this bottom was not trimmed very well yesterday. Okay. As you know that you get a little bit more close to being centered, you very carefully can turn it up. Tool again. So careful to start to peel that off. Notice I'm holding my hand there at the top. That kind of keeps it from grabbing and jumping off the wheel. Okay, now that we've got that kind of trimmed up, there's some, let me check this a second. Take just a little bit more off of this one area right here. Okay, there's different types of feet. Some of them are what's called a hidden foot, and some of them are where you actually see a design. You can check some of your ceramic books that are at your local libraries and things, and they'll show you different designs that you could put on for feet. And now you can kind of see that. Now since the bottom of the pot's like a ½ inch thick, we want to remove some of that thickness. It makes the piece feel lighter in your hands for a functional piece. It also, if you have a thick enough bottom that you can tool down, you can even glaze the bottom of your pot and just leave the rim unglazed so it doesn't stick to the kiln shell. A lot of times if you look at your commercial pottery, go to your cupboard and look at some of the mugs or plates, you'll see that that's what they've done. Just to get some of the crumbs off. Let's take a look at that. There we go. That gives you a nice little foot. Now, the last thing that you need to do before you can say that this pot is finished is you need to put an artist signature on it. I feel that this is really important. Ceramics are going to stay here for the next several centuries, 5,000 years. If you think about how we've looked at cultures, we've learned about their pottery. We've learned what they've eaten, where they've traveled. And so having your name on the bottom of the pot is part of history for a long, long time. Here's a couple examples. If we had a volcano maybe erupt and cover the studio right now with volcanic lava is 2,000 degrees. And these pottery pieces can go up to 3,000 degrees before they start to disappear. So we could have an archaeologist come in here 5,000 years from now, dig up through volcanic lava and find this piece of pottery with your name on it. Another thing we have sometimes to think about is like out here in California, we have earthquakes, and if we'd fall into the bottom of the ocean, our computers would disintegrate, the cars would rust to just, dust, but the ceramic pieces would survive. Even if they're shrouds, we learn from those and can carbon date them. So you always want to come in and somewhere on your piece, typically on a wheel piece on the bottom, put your artist signature there. Now we can carbon date these to find out when they were made, but we can also go ahead, sometimes it's nice to go ahead and put a year on there. And that, congratulations, that's the first pottery piece.